Okay, I just saw Zack Snyder's latest film, Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, and I have plenty of thoughts about this movie, so let's get into it. Just a quick spoiler warning for Rebel Moon Part 1. I will be talking about the ending of that movie as Part 2 kicks off pretty much where the first one left off. So there's your warning right there. So as mentioned, this movie kicks off right where the last one left off, where they basically went back to their home planet. They defeated the villain, but you find out that he's not actually dead. They're bringing him back. It's kind of like Darth Vader. It's a whole ripoff of Star Wars. The first one was very mediocre, but I saw some potential in this series. I had some optimism about it due to some of what Zack Snyder is able to bring to a film, as well as some of the characters that seemed interesting, like Anthony Hopkins' robot character seemed interesting, as well as some others. So I had some fascination of where they were going to take the second one. I wasn't all that hopeful for it because the first one was a bit of a mess and just had such terrible writing. But, you know, I do like some of Zack Snyder's movies. I have been a fanboy of the past. I have liked pretty much everything he's done with DC and all those superhero movies that he did. But I've had a lot of trouble really enjoying anything he's done outside of that. Not only does that continue to be the case with Rebel Moon Part 2, this thing is just so inept the whole way around. It is just a laughing stock. It makes me angry at the type of movies that these are and what they're trying to do and how they're executed. It is just abysmal the whole way around. There's nothing to enjoy with these Rebel Moon movies. I just cannot believe it. The first one had this mess of bringing all these characters together and just having these individual scenes that aren't connected to each other at all. Just be this perfect example of sloppy writing with no substance at all. And the second one manages to be worse. I don't know how you pull that off, Zack Snyder, but you did. Congratulations. This movie is a dumpster fire. Just terrible. So basically, in terms of marketing, it was supposed to be, the first part was supposed to be this big build-up and setup of all the characters, flesh everyone out, and then the second part was supposed to be this big climactic battle and wrap everything up in a hopefully satisfying way. And that's not what this is at all. What we actually get in part 2 is even more of what part 1 did. We have a whole hour, I shit you not, of just farming sequences in slow-mo, as well as just characters just telling us their backstories in the most jarring way possible. I mean, the writing in this film is just so amateur hour, and it's unbelievable from someone who can make professional looking and feeling movies like Zack Snyder, who definitely does have a style and a sense of purpose within the film world. He does bring something to the table, and this is just so ridiculously awful that I just can't wrap my head around how this even got made. As I've mentioned, it just hangs its head on dialogue and trying to build stuff from that, but Zack Snyder has never been strong as a writer. It's always been probably the weakest element of all of his films, really. Even his better ones, the writing is always a tad sloppy at points. But what he brings to the table is visual spectacle and amazing looking action sequences. And yes, there are definitely some shots in here that I could definitely credit and say are good looking, but because the film is so empty and meaningless, I could not care less how this film looks because it's so inept in everything that matters. If you want to look for redeeming elements to this movie, there are a couple of performances and characters that I didn't mind. For example, Jaimin Honsu, I think, is the absolute standout of this movie, but it's a damn shame because he's in this movie for like 5 minutes. But, you know, every single scene that had this character in there, I was a little bit more engaged than pretty much every other aspect of this movie, where I was almost tuning it out at a certain point because I was just so tired of it all. Just why would I want to be engaged with something that's not really trying that hard to engage me? Everything that it offers in terms of sci-fi spectacle is derivative of far better properties and films. For example, I saw clear influences in Star Wars, which is similar to the first one. This was going to be his Star Wars epic in a sense, but he's had to change it, obviously. You definitely see that again here. And you do see a little bit of Dune in here. And oh my god, I would rather watch the worst Star Wars movies than watch this. I mean, say what you want about The Rise of Skywalker, I could have some fun with that movie. I can't have any fun with this. This thing is a snooze fest. Just because of the fact that the writing is so inept. The performances are so wooden. There's this romance between two central characters, our protagonist, who takes a massive backseat in this film. It seems like Zack Snyder's not interested in this character at all. And then the Han Solo ripoff guy that she's with, they have no chemistry together, but we've forced this romance down our throats that just doesn't work at all. There's no chemistry. And I think what makes it worse is I just came off seeing Challenges a few days ago, which is full of chemistry and intimacy that is at an all-time level. And then I watch this and it just feels so artificial and so wooden that I just can't connect with these characters at all. But as I mentioned, Djimon Hounsou's pretty cool. The robot, once again, played by Anthony Hopkins, is pretty fascinating. There are some cool sequences with this character. But for someone that had so much potential, in the first one, I was really optimistic to seeing more of that character in the second one because they kind of made a scene pointing towards that at the end of the first one. You get about the same amount of screen time with that character in this that you did in the last film. And I just don't care anymore. It feels like you're wasting my time the entire way through because we have to set up all these meaningless fucking sequels and try to advertise this Snyder cut of Rebel Moon, which at this point I don't give a shit about. This film, both of them, are so inept that I am not on board to watch a 3-4 hour cut of this movie. I don't care if it has a sex scene in there now or some blood in it. Who gives a shit? Give me a good, well-developed story. I was on board with Zack Snyder during the whole Release the Snyder Cut campaign with Justice League. He deserved to have his vision put out there with Justice League. And he did a fucking amazing job with it. And I give all the props in the world to him for that. But with this, it feels like you're just taking advantage of people that had such goodwill towards you and were willing to support you. It just feels so dirty and wrong when watching this because some people are still going to be on board with the hype train and still believe that he's going to deliver with these Snyder cuts of these other films. But I'm done with that. Get it right the first time. How many amazing filmmakers on similar platforms can do amazing work in this? Netflix are known to throw fucking money at directors and give them their creative vision. I mean, you look at a Martin Scorsese, he got $300 million to make The Irishman. David Fincher got a shit ton of money to make The Killer. And they're amazing movies and they don't need all these cuts and they're mature. So I don't know who to believe when I hear Zack Snyder say, oh, Netflix was thinking that this was going to be a PG kind of IP that was accessible to everyone, so I had to make it like that, and the R-rated cut can be the extended cut. I just don't buy that anymore because all of his films do that now. It's like, at some point, you just have to really buck up, defend your vision, and put it out there the way you want it, instead of having these producers fuck you around. I don't buy it anymore. I'm not willing to give excuses to these inept movies anymore. I'm not going to watch this shit just in the hopes that one day a better version's going to come out. It feels like a fucking live service game where it's unfinished and then they're like, oh, trust me, bro, we're going to finish it later and it's going to be exactly what you want. No, get it right the fucking first time. I'm sick of this first draft nonsense going out to people, especially people that have such goodwill towards you and support you. It feels so wrong. Also, there are talks for this to have 6 movies, which was a surprise to me because I thought that this was going to be a 2-part saga and that was it. And I was kind of fine with that. I was like, okay, I'll watch them. The first one was mediocre. Hopefully the second one's better. Turns out it's not. But, you know, I can fucking wash my hands of it, move on with my life. And Zack Snyder can move on with his life and do something that hopefully works. But no, I just hear recently on Twitter that he's going to make 6 of these. And after finishing Rebel Moon Part 2, I can definitively say that he does set up a third movie. There is a full sequel bait scene at the very end of this movie, and it just felt so fucking forced. It talks about one scene that happens in a character's backstory, and it just kind of branches off from there, and oh my god, it just felt so forced. What are we doing here with this? I am just so tired of this. So many filmmakers and production companies are taking movie fans for a ride by trying to draw out as much money as possible. Like, just make a good fucking movie. That's all I care about. I don't really give a shit about 1,000 spin-offs and 18 fucking sequels. It doesn't work. At some point, people get sick of it, and this thing has been bad from the beginning. So why would I and so many other people be interested in watching 6 of these movies with probably 6 Snyder cuts? That's ridiculous. Stop wasting my time. I apologize for the rant in some ways, but I'm just so tired of it. And this movie does nothing to really interest me in this universe anymore. Any optimism that I had towards Rebel Moon from the first one was foolish. This movie does not get better at all. It doesn't make things better. It doesn't develop really any of the characters. The characters that are interesting take a backseat. The protagonist takes a backseat. And, you know, if Zack Snyder's not going to care about these characters within the screenplay, why the fuck should I? That's all I have to say here. As I said, there's some cool shots. The score sometimes is pretty decent. But honestly, it's just so choppy, messy. Anything that matters doesn't work. The visual effects are very inconsistent. I found them a little bit better in the first one to this one. And there are some weird editing choices that kind of became laughable in some moments. There's one where someone falls out of a ship and hits the ground, and the way that he hits the ground is just so ridiculous and jarring that it just felt funny. And as I said, the sequel baiting at the end just felt so forced. It's just a laughing stock. Like, why should I care? Why should you care? Don't bother with this. Don't waste your time. There's so much better shit out there right now. You know, say what you want about a movie like Civil War. At least it's trying to be bold and interesting and is well shot, well made. And then Challenges has just come out, which is incredible. Go watch those movies before you watch this rubbish. I'm hearing Abigail's good too. Check that out. I mean, don't waste your time here. This is just suffering and nonsense. And I think even if you're kind of like the first one, I don't think this one, as I said, is any better. I think this is a very disappointing end to this kind of 2-part saga that we were originally penned to have. I don't know. When's it going to end? Why are we bothering with this? I don't recommend you check this out. I think that you should stay away from this movie because it's just a painful, boring watch. It's not even fun to watch as a laugh. I really wish this could have been a good movie from Zack Snyder. As I said, I don't have any real ill will towards the guy. I do like a lot of his films, and I want to be into a lot of his films. You know, he does have a style that agrees with me most of the time. So I am always going to watch one of his films. But if this is the path and direction that he's going to do, if he's going to try and be James Cameron with Avatar but with Rebel Moon, I'm out. I'm not watching another one of these movies. This killed it for me. If Zack Snyder decides to go and make something else, I'll be back on board with plenty of optimism. But this thing, just no. I'm going to give Rebel Moon, the first time in a while that I'm giving this score, 0.5 out of 5. I just think that there is nothing here that I'm going to remember. Even the good parts just aren't worth sticking around for because, as I said, every single thing that matters doesn't work at all. So why should I care about the parts that are slightly better? I'm done. I have standards here. I'm sick of this. And those are my thoughts towards Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. Let me know what you think about this movie in the comments below. I'm sure some of you disagree with me and some of you agree with me. That's just the way that Zack Snyder movies go. But as I said, I want the best for Zack Snyder. I want him to keep making cool movies, but just stay away from this. This is a blunder, and I'm done. And I don't think it's worth your time. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think about this movie in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.